What do you have more conviction in, crypto or content creation?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I know. That's your bread and butter.
I think content creation is something that everyone should understand how it works and how to do it, regardless of whether you want to be a big time or not. There's just no world in which content creation doesn't become more and more important for business, for life, for opportunities moving forward into the future, especially as things become more digital and as there are more and more voices and messaging and marketing out there. Understanding how to connect with people, create content to connect with people, even on a small scale, is probably the most valuable thing you can learn over the next year or two. And if you're not, you're going to be left behind in the new world.
Welcome back to the show, everybody, and for another exciting episode. I have on here Jason Cline, and this man kept popping up on my timeline. A lot of familiar faces. This guy's part of the Funks community. He's doing like 40 different projects. He's a good memer. He's a huge TikToker, got a YouTube channel, and now he's own project called Codes, which I'm also an owner on. So just want to throw that disclaimer out there. But honestly, couldn't really figure out what it really was. So I've just been kind of along for the ride. And Jason's one of the more interesting personalities that I've come across in NFT Twitter. So I really had to just figure out what was really going on under the hood. So thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. We could just go straight to the beginning and get straight off to the bat. What came first, content creation or crypto?
Content creation. Yeah. Well, it's actually a funny story. I started making content in January of 2020. So just a few months before everything shut down. In hindsight, great time to start learning how to make content. It's really funny, but yeah, so I started making content then. Crypto, I didn't get really deep into NFTs and in Ethereum specifically until the beginning of 2021. So a whole year later. However, I was familiar with crypto for years prior to that. Everyone has one of these stories, but I had a buddy, I'm from Ohio, and one of my buddies in Ohio, he was what I would classify as like a super nerd. And I just remember just many years ago, him telling me about Bitcoin, and I went down this rabbit hole. Like he was just mining it on one of his home computers and a laptop. And I had a laptop at the time that would have been basically like I could have mined Bitcoin on my laptop. That's how early it was. And he was mining Bitcoin on his computers at home. And then like I just got busy with life and school and just never did it. But I was familiar with the technology. And then he calls me up like years later and he's telling me about this Ethereum thing. He's like, dude, he's like, graphic cards, Ethereum, start mining this right now. And I was like, dude, I gotta buy what? And I have to set up what? I was like, I'm living on like $25 a week on food. And I'm like trying to get through, life. And I was like, I can't afford the graphics card thing, whatever. And so he was mining a bunch of Ethereum as well. And then, we all know what happened to both Bitcoin and Ethereum. He has since moved. He's been in Hawaii for many years now, but he retired early, let's just say that, and lives a pretty fun life. But yeah, that's kind of my like first intro to crypto. And then I started, like I said, content creation in 2020, and then really heavy into NFTs and crypto beginning of 2021. Yeah,
we'll explore that here in a second. What was your original focus of content creation? Right when you open up your Twitter page, you see that it's like you have about 4 million TikTok followers. Was that the original intro? And what was your content curated around?
Yeah, that was the original intro. Sorry, my computer's about to die, so let me make sure I don't lose you.
Yeah, you are all good. You are all good. You charged?
Yeah, okay, we're charging. TikTok was my first platform. So I got like Gary V pilled with TikTok, as a lot of people did in the early days of TikTok. And I had never really followed Gary V that closely up until then, and I don't follow him closely now. Obviously, it's a little bit problematic behavior. But oh shoot, let me.
Yeah, it's go ahead. You're good. So I remember when I first came across you, you definitely are empowered by the funk ethos of calling out the grifters, the scammers, or maybe just the inauthentic leaders of the space, I guess would be the light way to put it. So the fact that you're saying Gary is what introed you,
Yeah.
who is a quite contentious figure from many different perspectives, yeah, kind of caught me off guard.
Yeah, no. So it's interesting because again, if you don't know anything about Gary Vee, and in those days, the end of 2019, 2020, I've always been very entrepreneurial. I've always been like, working on side projects. I've invested in real estate. I've owned over 20. Well, I don't know if I've ever publicly doxed this before, but I had a real estate portfolio in Ohio. I self-managed it. I did all the property management. I did all the renovations. I did all the leasing. I sold all those properties before I moved to Ohio, but was very deep in the real estate game, and that was like my side hustle. And and just anyways, I've always been like into these things. But when you're working a corporate job, and the job that I had was very intense, a high performer at what I did, and like that took up all of my time. But then on my free time or weekends, I was always like trying to learn from people, learn from other entrepreneurs, learn from people who were out there. And it's like hard to miss Gary Vee if you're like looking for that kind of content. And so I just started like, I don't know where exactly I saw him, if it was a YouTube or whatever. I didn't have Twitter at the time. I didn't download Twitter until, you could probably look at my profile, April of 2021. So I'd already been in crypto for months before I even downloaded a Twitter account. I was like, well, I guess I have to do this now. But backing up, yeah, I got into making content because he was just railing on like, oh, TikTok, it's this new opportunity. You can be a nobody and make a video and it blows up overnight. And I did a little research into it, and the For You page was interesting. It was the first of its kind algorithm where you literally could be a nobody and it would still serve your video up to like the masses, and you could be viral if the video was good enough. And I ran into someone in the Bay Area. That's where I was living at the time in early 2021. 2020, 2021, and they had 10,000 followers on TikTok. They started in October of 2019, and they were like, dude, yeah, Gary Vee also got me convinced to like try it out, and I've got 10,000 followers, and they're making some silly content. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna do this. Like, why not? So I started making videos in January of 2020. None of those videos currently exist online anywhere. Maybe one day I'll open up the vault of the really cringy videos I was making in the early days. But yeah, man, that was the start of my content journey on TikTok, and we can dive more into TikTok specifically. But from that grew, I didn't have an Instagram, so I started an Instagram, which we recently hit 100,000 on Instagram, which is kind of cool. That's been a grind. I started a YouTube channel, started all these things. And then, like I said, the Twitter account didn't come until a year later. And I made sure that the Twitter account was 100% crypto NFT focused. So I've never posted any of my like general, my other stuff on there.
It's interesting because crypto has lived and died by Twitter for pretty much since its inception. And then it kind of gravitated out towards podcasting, and then the grifters kind of went towards YouTube, right? So I always try to point people away from it. How do you manage your audiences between all these different platforms when crypto is so siloed to just Twitter? Are they complementary of each other? Or do you find it troubling or tough to try to mesh them all together?
Yeah, so that was something in the beginning. I guess also just a little bit more about me for people who don't know me or kind of know my style. Like I was in NFTs and crypto heavy the beginning of 2021. However, I didn't start making content on crypto and NFT stuff until the end of 2021 at the earliest, but really it was into 2022. And the reason for that was I didn't want to be that like fake person, that fake shill. And an example I like to give is drop shippers and drop shipping. So drop shipping was like a legit business practice. And not saying that it's not now, but it wasn't romanticized on YouTube for a long time. And there were like some legit people making really good money, running really good drop shipping businesses. And they knew what they were talking about, but they weren't making like videos about it. And if they were, it was hit or miss. And then all of a sudden, what happens is people realize that the RPM and the CPM on dropshipping videos on YouTube was like 10 or 20x any other content because it was such a valuable space for advertisers to market on. So then all of a sudden, everyone and their brother is a dropshipper, and they're making the videos on how you too can be a dropshipper and making the courses. they were just they didn't know anything. They literally would read a course. They would take a course of one guy, copy paste the things, make some YouTube videos, and make a bunch of money overnight. And that's what I saw people doing as content creators in the NFT space. Pretty early on, I saw that happening. And I was like, wait a second, these guys they don't have no idea what they're talking about. They don't even know like what the smart contract is or how Ethereum works or like what's going on here. And they're making videos about it. It was very cringy. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to be deep in this stuff. I'm going to be deep in communities. I'm going to learn how it works. I'm going to launch my own projects. I'm going to network and connect. I'm going to do all of that and build a base of credibility and build this brand of someone who's in it before I start making content. So it comes across as like more genuine and, you know, it's not this like kind of fake, you know, this fake expertise or whatever. So that being said, I didn't start making content until probably 2022 on this stuff. So I was in it for a year. But when I did start making content, I originally started trying to make, sorry, I'm getting back to your original question. We went on a little side quest. Okay. It's fine. We went
as long as you could wrap it up with a nice bow, then it's more than acceptable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know if it's gonna be a nice bow. I suck at wrapping presents, but whatever. That's another topic for another day. Bringing it back, I started posting on all my main channels. So my 4 million TikTok, my 188,000 YouTube channel, my 100K Instagram channel. I started posting crypto style videos, like intermixing them in there. And what I realized really early is, none of my like main audience could care less about this. Number one. Number two, it was actually devaluing my other content. So then it was like my content that was going viral and doing well. Now that wasn't doing as well because it's like watered down crypto stuff. And so I made the really tough decision to start over on completely new channels. And to be honest with you, I don't even know if this is the right decision long term. And I'm wrestling with this as a creator. But right now I have, you know, Twitter, like I said, is 100%. It's my largest channel for crypto and NFT stuff. It only has 15,000, which isn't a ton. I mean, it's a lot for a lot of people, but for like a content kind of business, it's not a lot. And then I have, you know, the Instagram account and the YouTube channel that are like the Web3 style separate channels that I've been that I've been posting on. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, basically I had to create new channels to start, but it's really hard to grow new channels when you're in a niche of a niche because NFTs are a niche of crypto already. So it's not like these accounts are going to get millions of followers. So now I'm wrestling with, well, is there a point in which I basically nuke my main account content that's viral and just start posting NFTs and crypto stuff? Because if I did that, I would basically overnight be one of the largest creators with my account size in the space. So it's an option, but it's not one that I've decided that I wanted to do yet, especially not in a bear market.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you want to think over. It validates essentially the same issues that I was going through, of course, on a much smaller account. But for YouTube, I realized as I started it as a podcasting channel and then began trying to explore this idea of like NFTs and crypto in Vegas with more like YouTube-y content, right? Those kind of conflate with the algorithm. And Instagram had always been, for me, was always like very entrepreneurial. And then once I started posting crypto stuff, kind of just like all the likes and shit just immediately went down. So, but then when you move to Twitter, right, it's more authentic. So you can shit post and you can really just kind of drive in whatever thesis that you want. The kind of approach that I'm taking now is to really just specialize in a micro niche. So for me, it was starting with Mooncats, which then expanded to historical NFTs, which now is kind of expanding towards like broader NFTs. And you just keep going that way. It's starting very broad, and then it's tough because there's so much competition there. And also, if you're starting broad, everyone has a different opinion of what crypto really is. So it's really hard to kind of like corral all of them into one account, unless you're doing these like NFT, like basic like metaverse or NFT accounts, but those ones are kind of faceless. And I think me and you are both on the same idea as like we're the brand at the end of the day. So you have to like be really authentic to who you are.
100%. No, it's challenging. I mean, there's a reason why there's not a lot of good content being made from a personal branded perspective. There's content of like NFT Now and Decrypt and these publications that have VC money, by the way, to like hire a team of people to make all of this like headless and faceless content, and they pump that stuff out daily, but they have budgets of million, they raised millions of dollars to be able to get this content out daily. But none of it is branded. It's not like there's no Graham Stephan of NFTs. And Graham is someone I've looked up to for a long time, and what he did in the space and his consistency. And over time, a niche that was not popular on YouTube became popular, and he was the guy that everyone went to because he had this catalog of really good content about finance and personal finance. But for a long time, I don't know if you know anything about Graham Stephan, but for a long time, literally no one cared about his channel because it's like, no, who cares about personal finance? But it's funny because this story of YouTubers, like I'm deep in the content stuff. I mean, I watch YouTube, I study creators, I look at like journeys, so I know all the stuff, but there are lots of times where there are creators who are making content that just is early before anyone else is, or like no one cares about it. And they have a vision and they're like, this is pretty interesting to me. And I think this is valuable content, and they make good content. And it just like over time, like more people are interested in that type of topic. And then boom, oh, there's a catalog of these videos. Oh, let's go binge watch, Graham Stephan's 50 videos about personal finance. And then all of a sudden it comes in like exponential waves. It's like nothing, slow. And then you have one video that gets on the recommended page on YouTube. And then now it's like, exponential leaps above and beyond. So for me and for you and for people that are trying to be a brand that is talking from like a credible source on this particular niche, that is the opportunity. The opportunity is to build a base layer of good content, of credibility, of, being consistent and not just posting one video or one podcast once in a blue moon. And eventually, I don't know that this space will ever be it won't explode like a Graham Stephan channel, because that's general broad, right? Like that's a finance channel, that's big, that's broad. And to be honest with you, those personal finance type channels like NFTs and crypto will just become another subcategory off of what they talk about. And because they're trying to capture millions of people. There aren't ever going to be, in my opinion, millions of people that are watching content about crypto or NFT stuff. That's just not the case. But you don't need millions of people in order to have like a good business, a good career, good opportunities. Because when you get more niche, just like drop shipping, you don't need as many people to be as valuable. Like the views are way more valuable. The community is valuable. Like, you have the opportunity to create value for your viewers on a smaller basis, but that still can provide a living for you, if that makes sense.
Makes complete sense. So what's your opinion then when you look at some NFT teams or individuals in the space who are kind of trying to take this a generalized approach, maybe in a tokenized fashion? For example, something like Rug Radio or Bankless or the Nifty portal, right, where they have multiple shows running under one brand. And there is a face attached to it, where Rug Radio is maybe one face with like a bunch of accompanying faces. You have Bankless, that's two co-hosts, which then they have a sub-series of different shows and content. And the Defiant, there's like a few of them, but those are kind of like the ones with faces. What is your perspective on them? Is it are they because they start out very niche? Bankless started out as Ethereum, right? And then as Ethereum exploded, then they're like, oh crap, we have so many things that we have to cover. Now we have to cover NFTs, DeFi, metaverse, whatever. Is that the right approach, do you think? Or is there an inefficiency in the crypto market that when a content creator scales, they begin to lose some of that credibility because of the chaotic nature of the space?
This is a really, really good question. And it's super in the weeds probably for some people, but I think it's an interesting question. The reality is you can't make the reality is you can't make a living making content on NFT stuff right now. That is just a fact. There's nobody that's making a living that can make any money on NFT stuff right now, unless you're someone who's like a scammer or just taking any Joe Schmo off of Twitter and saying, yeah, I'll make that. I'll post that tweet for a few $1,000, or, oh yeah, I'll make a video shilling your thing and post it on TikTok for a few $1,000. There's no legitimate living that can happen as a creator with NFTs right now, because the way that creators make money on all the platforms are views. You got to like rake in the views, which NFT content's never going to rake in the views. So there's no way to monetize that way. ad revenue from YouTube and stuff, you can't even get monetized because you've got to get enough watch hours and time. And again, same kind of, it's very correlated to views. So you're not getting ad revenue. The only way as someone who's in NFTs to make an income is if you have a sponsored video. So that can be a sponsored video from a project that's sponsoring you, or you're making a video and you have a brand that is sponsoring you and you're either plugging them or pitching them, or you can do a white labeled video where you as a content creator are helping create a video for a project for something and they're paying you for that service. So those are really the only two ways you can make money as a content creator in Web3 stuff right now. And I'm telling you, there's not even enough of those opportunities to go around to even make a living. So what you have happening is you have these companies, you have Rug Radio, you have Bankless, you have these other ones that the only way it works is if they get investor money and they get VC money to give them money, and then they hire a team. They run at a burn rate of X. Like none of them are making any money to break even. They just are taking on money to make the content and get out there, because the reality is, how many people can work for free for a long time? Not many. It's difficult. You got to figure out a way to make money. So the interesting thing is that is one avenue of making content. However, I see a huge untapped market of people. There are a few people starting to click for them, like the Thread guy I think it's starting to click for him in terms of the untapped potential of building an actual personal brand, outside of just being a Twitter Spaces host or a thread writer, like an actual content creator. It's like starting to plug in for him. But there's a huge untapped market of being a personal brand that is creating content, because it's so hard to do right now because you're not making money doing it. So you got to work on other things in order to keep it going. And that to me is where I see the biggest opportunity. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the people that are taking the money and making the content, but it becomes a different thing at that point. Mm-hmm. That's a business, that's a business. They have overhead, they have a bunch of expenses. They're trying to make the content that they're getting paid to make to hit the bills. So you lose you lose a lot of authenticity, I think, with those companies, because now they're business. It's they're like a CNN or Fox News kind of. They're a business. They're a media outlet. You have all these people that are now, they start with their personal brand, but now they're just a media outlet because they don't want to wait or pour into their personal brand to build something that can be sustainable over time, because they're in a rush. They need money now. So they're like, okay, well, they're going to take the money now and we're going to work on this. Maybe it grows, maybe it doesn't, but at least we have the money now. I don't know. Is my explanation making sense at all?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's an interesting dichotomy. It's like the business versus brand idea. Like, which route do you go? There's a fork in the road eventually once you get so big that you're going to have to choose one of them. Bankless, they had mentioned, or somebody had tweeted at them saying, they made $2.5 million in ad revenue. And then forget which one of the hosts said that was their burn rate essentially, because they had 30 people to employ. And I know Nifty Portal is kind of in the same boat. But when you go into the brand with Thread Guy, I've had him on the show twice now, and we kind of talked about exploring these different ideas of migrating outside of Twitter to Twitch, or what are your options? He kind of pioneered this idea of this market or was a director of vibes, which some people kind of followed, where it's which to me, that's just a fancy title. It's just the idea of dev teams suck at marketing. So they basically hire a brand to help them, reach the audience and do these Twitter spaces and different things like that. But he is also starting to think of okay, how do I leverage this brand now that it's 120,000 followers, and then go on to do this kind of branding opportunity, build your own project, which was leading me into my next question. It was something you didn't mention, is the fourth option, which is tokenizing or creating a project. When I had first started my podcast, I also started creating content April 2020. I used to work in the nightclubs and everything closed down, and I started the podcast to interview people. Consistently, people would ask why don't you have ad revenue? Why aren't you having somebody sponsor you? And I'm because the whole idea of creating content to me was to leverage that and the network you have to then go on and create a product or create a business, mm-hmm. or go create something like that. You see this now where, Nifty Portal has an NFT, Rug Radio has their tokenization, different content creators and go and build their own project, which you've done a handful, right? You had CryptoMarcs, which is the Andreessen or the Mark Andreessen thing. You have Codes. At what point in your content career within the NFT space did you realize like, hey, this is unsustainable? I need to create a project, and just to start with the first one that you did.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, I knew early on that I wanted to create a project because I saw a lot of things that I didn't like happening in a lot of projects, and I had no control over other than being like a vocal community member. Like I didn't have a way to like sway it or change it. And like I said, I was coming to this space from like a very professional role and like, you know, a high achiever, like hardworking, like had all the, you know, whatever. I came from a different place, and I think maybe a lot of people that came into the NFT space, especially recently, are coming from. And so for me, I was like, it was like the basics of communication, like just the weird back and forth and not understanding what's going on. And then as I started to like peel back the onion, because in the early days, people made it seem so complex and so complicated and so difficult. And oh, well, the dev has to do that, and we got to wait for the dev to do that, and you know, we can't do this until that, and it's a lot, and we're so happy that we just got a long. I'm just like, okay. At first, I was like, oh wow, maybe this is really complicated stuff here. Like this, we're like doing some like rocket science stuff. I don't know. I'm new. Like I have no idea. And then as I started to like understand and meet real developers that were really good at what they did and understand how things worked. And then I started like, wait a second, it's not that it's easy, but at the same time, all these things I was hearing before were all just lies. They were all just ways to like buy time. So in a lot of cases, the founding team could just sail off into the sunset, you know? And I had a very big problem with that. So I knew early on that I wanted to create something. It didn't happen the other way where I was like making content and I'm like, oh man, this isn't sustainable. Now I need to figure out a way to like make a project. I always wanted to, from early on, wanted to make a project. And that's kind of that piece. CryptoMarcs came about. I had been in the space for over a year at that point before CryptoMarcs came about. This is the first project. And someone in the Funk Discord, actually, Claudia, who ended up being the artist for all of the CryptoMarcs, posted a meme, and it was a crypto funk with the big head. It was the original like Mark Andreessen like crypto mark. They weren't called that at the time. It was like the meme. I saw that in the Discord, and I was like, this is hilarious. And I messaged Claudia, and I was like, can you make more of these? Like, this is hilarious. Like the egg, and everyone's like going off on it. People are posting that one image on Twitter and stuff. And I was like, this is pretty funny. And so first thing that it clicked is I didn't want to be part of a project. I didn't want to like found one of these projects that were like intense, where you had to like build up this whole hype thing, and you had to like do all the allow lists with all these people, and you had to have a roadmap that was like a metaverse and this and merch. And that to me was too crazy. Like I thought it would be fun to do something. I'm a pretty just ridiculous guy, and I like to have fun and encourage people to be positive and have fun and not take things too seriously. Although it's funny because I also take things seriously, and I come hard at people when I think they're doing some shady things, but you know, whatever. I'm a complicated person, but I was like, I love memes, and I've been in the funk community for a long time, and there were a lot of people that were really good at memes. I learned how to meme in that community. I was like, this is great. It's like, it can be a fun thing. It can be a meme. It's hilarious. And then I was like, Claudia, how can you make some like, and she's like, yeah, let me get working on it. So a few months go by, and she showed me some more of the traits and some of the things she worked on. And I was like, all right, this is great. I'm going to make this is going to be a thing. We're going to make this, like, let's keep it on the DL. And then we weren't actually completely finished yet with all of the art. And I saw on Twitter someone else had started. They were making their own version of CryptoMarcs, and I was like, okay. Then that put the fire under the seat. I was like, all right. I didn't just spend like with the artist and me like working on this idea. We didn't spend the last few months to like have someone just do like a haphazard job of it and swoop in to like capitalize on the A16Z and Mark Andreessen meme. So yeah, so that project, I started the Twitter account. Again, the idea was to make it like just organic, natural. You want to be part of the meme. You don't want to be part of the meme. I started the Twitter account on a Monday, and we minted the following Monday. It was 7 days from the time the Twitter account started to the time we minted. There was none of this like crazy overblown stuff. I was in spaces every day showing some of the art. You know, people are making memes, we're doing meme competitions. It was just a lot of fun. It's one of the most fun. It's like some of the most fun I've had in the space since I've ever been in it. Met some amazing people. We made a ton of memes. And then, I mean, I didn't even think it was going to mint out. You know, I was like, it's just a meme, right? I gave over 1,300 of them away for free. There's only 5,000. 1,300 of them went to people who were in all the other communities that I had been a part of before, right? And then the other ones all minted for 0.02 ETH. And we set up an NFTX vault right away. And then from that, I realized, oh, there are a lot of people that don't even know what an NFTX vault is or how to use it. So I did a spaces about it. And then I was like, oh, I bet I could get one of the founders of NFTX on a spaces. So then I got one of the founders of NFTX to join a spaces. And then that was when I spawned the idea of CryptoMarcs University, where we would actually, every week, we would have a spaces where we would bring on a founder of a project in the space that was doing something cool or interesting, and they could talk about it and people could learn the technology. So people learned about NFTX, people learned about Arweave and Rdrive and how to have things permanently stored on the blockchain for a one-time fee up front. And how to use that technology. This is before Manifold was using Arweave and Rdrive. Like I got all these different founders on, and it became this. It was supposed to just be a fun meme, like whatever you want to mint it, great. And then it became like, oh, people are learning, and all these founders are coming on the spaces. And then we started a CryptoMarc Universe. Mark Tank instead of Shark Tank. We did Mark Tank. So then every single week we would have Mark Tank. So people would come up, they would pitch their ideas that they were working on in the space. I had the sharks, the marks on stage. We did that for months. I'm talking like 3 months plus. All of it's recorded. All of it's up. We uploaded all of it to Rdrive, Arweave. We made a memer pack. Someone in the community made a memer pack, which was all the assets separated into PNG transparent files separately to make it easy for people to learn how to meme. They could just download this folder with hundreds of assets and be able to like drag and drop and all these things. So we did all of these things as just like additional to the meme. So the funny part was like it was a meme on the surface, but like in the community, people were learning and people were having fun. And from that, I think from the CryptoMarc project, there have been over 20 projects launched from people in the community that felt inspired. Now, most of them are like smaller projects, but the idea was I was trying to inspire people to like, hey, you can do this. You can learn the technology. You can be creative. You can explore how it works, and you can kind of do your own thing and launch a project. So that to me was a huge, 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 huge success. And there are still projects today that are launching that came out of people that were in that community that were inspired to like actually roll up their sleeves and figure out how to do this. That was a really long-winded way. That was the first project, CryptoMarcs.
It was a perfect answer, right? It makes it easier for me so I don't have to talk as much. What is it about the Funks community that inspires those who participate in it to vocalize their opinions against, we'll just put in quotes, the grifters and influencers and maybe bad actors? Of course, the Funks has quite a contentious history, right? Yep. It was a rugged project. The leaders of it have kind of gone on and take an agenda against the Yuga Labs, and then it's full of memers. The price is not reflected of the quality of the community. What is going on there that first attracted you, and from where it exists today? What is it about the Funks community that keeps it going even when there's no price movement?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, Funks, the most interesting story in all of crypto or in all of NFTs are Funks. There will be, I mean, whatever, you can believe it or not, but there will be lots of things that come out about Funks in the future, I believe. Documentaries, write-ups, books. There already have been hundreds and hundreds of articles and write-ups, but the everything that happens with Funks gets like suppressed by everyone else because everyone just immediately is like, oh, they have this like negative immediate reaction, and they just like, oh, everything that's that basically they just cast it off to the side and they just ignore it. But when you dive into what the Funks have done and the people that have come out of Funks that aren't the people that people immediately think of, it's actually incredibly impressive. It's one of the most impressive stories in all of NFTs. But for me, when I first came in, I didn't mint a Funk. So Funk's minted in June or July or whatever of 2021.
2021, yeah.
2022, sorry.
Wasn't
and I came around when Not Larva Labs was launched in November of 2022. So there was months that went by. I missed out on that initial rug and list, delist, change to the Philip token, devs and the dev team left. I missed out on all of that, but I had been a part of a lot of communities up until then. And when I saw Funks being posted on Twitter, I went in the Discord. Again, this was like a few days before Not Larva Labs launched. Immediately, I recognized the difference in the Twitter. I was like, oh, these people are real. They're not just saying like, literally, they're not saying GM, wag me, like, blah, blah, blah. This is, I don't know. It's a little hard to explain in like simple terms for people who weren't a part of it, but I can tell you for sure, immediately there was a different vibe. And I knew that there was a different level of maturity and person, which is funny because it's all memes and jokes. But I knew right away, being in that Discord after spending time in probably hundreds of other Discords up until that point, there was something very different about the people who were behind this. So I realized that, and then I was like, what is going on here? And then over the next like month or 2 or 3 months, I started digging into like the actual story of what happened. And I'm like, wait a second, there aren't devs here. The people who made Not Larva Labs were just community members because the devs left. Technically, the Funks all the way until the Funks tracked down Zagabond, which up until they tracked Zagabond down, no one knew who the dev was of CryptoFunks. But up until that point, Funks didn't even have control of the smart contract of the freaking NFT itself. So like at any point in time, Zagabond could have just rugged the whole thing and no one would have known. It would have just been dead, basically. Now there was a contingency plan to like maybe do some wrapping and whatnot. But anyways, if you dive into it, you literally had an NFT in the contract of the NFT, not in control by anyone that was in the community. You had a marketplace that was built that was a 0% fee, no royalty marketplace. That was the first of its kind at the time. And it was built very well. Very nice interface, very good UI. You could tell that the developer was like legit. It wasn't some like Fiverr project. Like these are some seasoned people that made this. And you start piecing it all together and you're like, how is this project here? It just didn't make sense. You're like, what? Why is everyone still here? Why didn't you just leave and go to some other project? And that's when I realized what real community was. And that is what originally was so inspirational, is you had people that had no other common interest other than they bought this NFT that the devs rugged, and they came together and they said, we're not going to let this be our story. We're not going to let these devs leave and leave us holding a bag of zero. We're going to work our faces off to make these things valuable, to make the community fun, and to build something. And that's what they did. Fast forward, all the way until, it was months. There were multiple people that were working months doing blockchain. You think Zach XBT is like, he's famous, right? And everyone knows he does like the blockchain analysis. And we're talking about a group of people that were Funks that spent months trying to track down who the developers of Funks were. And they found him. And oh my gosh, he happened to be the freaking founder of Azuki.
That was a wild day on Twitter.
Yeah, it was just this crazy, like of all the people, it was Zagabond, right? Which is, it's crazy. And the group of people were able to get Zagabond to give back all the mint proceeds that he made off of, it was 1.5 million, 1.4, 1.5 million. And then they had like 500 Funks in the dev wallet, right? That he also owned. And so they were able to get all of that back for the Funks to have. Again, now it's like, I don't think people understand the story. Like the community was all on their own without the devs. They tracked down the devs. They convinced a dev to give back $1.5 million and 500 Funks back to the community. There's nothing more Web3 about that. Like that is decentralization. That is a community that's kind of taken power and has figured this stuff out. And then from that, even building all the tools that exist now, like the Funk Flywheel, for instance. No other NFT project has a Funk Flywheel, which is an AMM kind of. However, it's for mid to high tier NFT. Like there's no other solution for NFT projects for liquidity providing at mid to high tier rarity of their collection. But the Funk Flywheel provides liquidity to mid and high tier based on all of these things. I don't want to get into all the details of it, but all of this development that's happened, the website, the sales bot, if you go to the GitHub for Funks, there's all of these open source codes, like free for anyone to use and fork. And the Funk sales bot has been forked over 50 times. People just use it. That is the ethos of the community, is builders, people that are making things for others to be able to build on top of and to be able to keep expanding decentralization and this like real Web3 ethos into the space. Like that's what's actually going on. And that's why the price doesn't reflect the value and the quality of people. I just had a meetup in Southern California and everyone there was Funks. Anyone, I would challenge anyone in the space, if anyone in the space was at that dinner and at that meetup, meeting the people who actually own Funks, your perspective would change night and day from what Funks are, because these people that are in the Funk community are legitimately some of the most genuine, smart, sharp, and sophisticated people in all of NFT space. It's like it's like you hide behind the memes, you hide all the talent and you hide all the builders. They all hide behind the memes of NFTs and the narrative that like Funks have. They hide behind that. And that's like how they're protected in a sense. It protects them from getting their time wasted from people who are going to just try and use them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Vegas also has a pretty large NFT community, and there's actually a pretty large amount of Funks that participate in it. And one of the aspects that I've noticed with the Funk communities, it's largely a lot of builders. Yeah, of course, maybe the branding has taken a hit from some of the broader things that have happened. But most of those that are participating are either building their own project or they're actively building their Twitter account. It's not as much the exclamation floor type people that are sitting inside of a Discord, or the when type people. You don't really see much of that, which is interesting. But recently where we kind of connected was through fake memes. And it was this, and what I had realized was there was this parallel, which I had never noticed, between Funks and the Pepe community, which was largely this like counterculture movement that was kind of translated through memes, which I had not noticed at the time. Of course, I think Funks kind of takes a little bit more of an aggressive approach to it. Maybe that's just because with Ethereum, there's a lot more scams that happen, unfortunately. But there are some parallels to the community. Same with Pepe's, where if they needed something done, they just went and built it as a community. They didn't really outsource it. They kind of sourced the talent that existed within their intellectual capital pool of the community and went on to build it. And I've noticed it more with Funks. That's kind of what happens and how that participates. But I don't want to stick on Funks too long. It's interesting. Yeah. It's that's kind of like the bread and butter. Everybody in the NFT space kind of has this community that they fall back on to kind of, where your people are. And Funks is for a lot of people, that's kind of where it is. But I do want to learn about codes, man. I bought codes, or I minted them because I wanted to support. I didn't really know what it was. And then I kind of looked away for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden there was all kinds of crazy stuff that was happening. So first, can you tell us, like, what was the idea behind codes? And then kind of like what has happened over the last 2 or 3 weeks since it minted?
Yeah. It's actually, it's only been a week and a half.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know. That's how wild this space is. Yeah. So this past Friday was the week anniversary, and what is it, Tuesday? So it's not even been 2 weeks. So code. So I also, part of the fake meme movement a little bit. Like I really started rocking with that, and that got my creativity going. I started exploring like Manifold and open editions and creating a collection that, you're adding value to the original holders by airdropping pieces. Again, for me, I really like to understand the tools in the tool chest. I think if you understand all the tools available in the tool chest, you're more likely to create cool things, and you're more likely to be able to like connect dots that other people may not connect. Because if you don't even know that you have a drill in your toolbox, it's like, well, there's a screw there, but the hammer won't work. I can't do anything. I can't, I'm done. It's like, well, no, you have a screwdriver in your toolbox. You can just go and, screw that in. So it may be a weird analogy, but that's how I think of it.
That was a really good analogy, actually.
Most important part. Huh?
That was a really good analogy, actually.
it's like the toolbox is the most important part. And most people in the space, I don't want to get a little like preachy, but most people in the space spend all of their time like just looking at someone else's construction site and looking at someone else's what they're doing and what they said and what's the drama today and what's this Twitter Spaces and why is my thing that I own the price not going up? This sucks. I hate life. This person's evil because they didn't make my thing that I bought go up in price. And oh, there's a scammer and oh, there's a drama and oh, there's a regulation. No, hardly anyone is like, dude, your toolbox is empty. You don't even have hammer and nails. Like, what are you doing? Learn all the things that you can do. Like, put more tools in your toolbox. So that's what I have been, that's what I done with Manifold, learning Zora, all these different tools and open editions and how the contracts work, how you can burn, how you can set it up, how do you write the copy, how do you update your OpenSea page to have the bio and the stuff. All of these little details, that all adds up to like just knowing how this kind of stuff interconnects. So I kind of been laying that foundation for a few months prior to Jack doing checks. So Jack did checks. The thing that was fascinating with me with checks was that he created this world in which what historically would have been a rug, he used that as like, that is the narrative of how the project works. And what I mean by that is historically, if you minted an NFT and the dev changed the metadata of your NFT, you're going to be pretty mad. Like, you're not going to like that. And that's going to kill the project because most projects are PFP projects where it's like, well, I bought what I bought. I have this thing. It's rare. Don't change it. That's mine. And that's fungible. And this is not, you know what I mean? But Jack was like, no, I'm going to do an open edition. You're all going to get the same image. And guess what? That image isn't even going to stay the same. It's going to change. And you're going to go on this journey, all of you together, focus on one image. And that image can change and the story can change. But now you have a focused attention on one thing. And you're driving all that engagement and attention on a single narrative all at the same time, which is really powerful when you talk about social media, momentum, getting people talking about it, because now people aren't posting their one of 10,000 different PFP looking things and everyone's fighting for the same airspace, and it dilutes the message a bit because everyone is like, my PFP, I got an alien, I got a cowboy, I got a beanie, I got a 3D, look at me, look at me, look at me. And then it's like, oh, well, I mean, this is cool, but what are you guys doing? What's up? It's like, oh, well, we're going to build a metaverse, or, oh, we're going to make cool merch. It's like, okay, I guess that's interesting. But what Jack did is he's like, no, you're all going to have one image. I'm going to change the image. And wherever that image goes, you're all going to be talking about that together all at the same time. I thought that was fascinating. That was the first time I've seen the meta narrative change where people were okay with the metadata changing and following along that story. So I, was just thinking about that. And when I had the light bulb moment, I guess what you would say, like the genesis of like codes and the idea is when Jack changed the checks to be the outline of the alien punk. Okay, so he changed it to be the alien punk. I go to the checks website and I'm like, oh yeah, there's the alien punk. The website looks cool. And I was like, but what if you didn't know what the alien punk was? Like, because there are people that may not even, they're like, oh, alien punk, that's cool. But what if they don't know that that's the most expensive CryptoPunks ever sold? What if they don't know the story behind that CryptoPunk? What if they don't know this information? Wouldn't that be interesting? So the first idea was actually creating a parallel collection to checks where every time he changed the metadata and the image of checks, I could somehow like have a collection that would direct people to a website, to a Twitter post, to more information about what the code, what the checks were saying, like what the message was. So people didn't feel like they were out of the loop, And I was like, wait a second, I'm talking about QR codes and I'm talking about directing people to like a more explainer or more information about what the checks are doing. I was like, wait a second, this is bigger than that. This idea is bigger than that because I can have a static image and not change it, but change the destination to anywhere that I want with a dynamic QR code. And that is powerful because now you're not just looking at an image and having to understand what is the story. What does this mean? What is Jack trying to tell us as the artist? What is the message he's trying to convey? You don't have to guess if you can direct them to a specific place. to a YouTube video, to a game, to a redemption page to be able to get gift cards to go to Starbucks or to have your DoorDash delivered to you, or movie tickets. You don't have to guess. You can scan the code and go on a new adventure every day. And it's like the most interactive opportunity for me as someone who's trying to be creative and exploring like my artistic side. I can like literally take people on a journey every day based on like what I want to explain to them or express to them or show them on any given day. That was like, holy cow, no one's done this. This is a great idea. And it was like a 24-hour like straight just like sprint of like, okay, how do I do this? Like, how do I do the QR code in a unique way that's cool? How do I make that? Like, how do I set this up so I can have numbered editions? That's when I dove into Zora and understanding Zora actually is the only one that lets you do open editions that are numbered. If you try to do an open edition on Manifold, it won't number them. And I was like, that's lame. People like numerology. We gotta play into that, and just on and on and on and on and on. And the name codes, I was like, checks, all caps. What's the name? It's a QR code. Codes, all caps. That's brilliant. And I went to OpenSea, typed in codes. It wasn't taken. So it's kind of like a very exciting like sprint to like get the first product, the first of it out. And then I posted it up on Zora, and I had the claim open for 3 days. And I think the first day or two, only a couple hundred people minted, and it was fine. But then it really started to gain traction, and people started to. I knew it was a good idea when people were just tweeting, oh, this is a great idea. This makes so much sense. It's like when it's simple, when you keep it so simple that you don't have to, I didn't have to explain it to anyone. They just, a QR code, they scanned it, it took them somewhere, and they're like, their own mind like was like, oh, they could see the opportunity without me having to explain it to them. That's when I was like, oh, this is not only a good opportunity for NFTs and the cool thing, but this is also the kind of project that can onboard new people, because all the people in Web 2 are used to scanning QR codes thanks to the pandemic. RIP, I hate the pandemic. It's a horrible time, but thanks to the pandemic, we got to look on the bright side, silver lining. Thanks to the pandemic, people got used to scanning QR codes everywhere, right? So there's the barrier to entry for someone that's in Web 2 right now to like come to Web 3. That's a high barrier to entry. However, if there's this code, and I've got a bunch of stickers and stuff being made up, and they can scan the code and it takes them somewhere, that's easy. They're used to doing that, and so it becomes this like less friction way of potentially onboarding new people into the space with codes. Anyways, I could go on and on. You can ask specific questions. You can tell I get excited about this stuff.
I can feel your passion through the screen. Right? It feels like I'm out there in California. So it sounds like it's a plan to onboard users who aren't familiar with Web3, and then kind of grow the overall pie, which is, the counter narrative to those who kind of extract capital from the space, right? Which is kind of what the fund community tackles. So that's first, I think, like a huge initiative to do. A lot of people speak about onboarding users. No one actually goes about it, right? They just try to create a project to kind of raise capital and leave. From the QR code perspective, at least up until this point, I don't want you to reveal too much information of what you have in the future. Like, what is the QR code taking you to so far? Is it just another image? Is it text? Is it a metaverse? Like, I know you could put all kinds of things into a QR code. So you literally have almost unlimited capability of what can be on the other side.
Yeah, that's the kind of like the tagline that I came up with, is a static image, infinite possibilities. And it just, to me, is such a cool art piece. I mean, it seems like silly that a QR code could be an art piece if you didn't think about it in this context. But just like imagine a codes in an art gallery. Every single day that someone walks by that, they're going to get a different experience with that piece of art. It's a static image with a dynamic and infinite experiences that can be attached to it from now into perpetuity into the future. That is powerful, because no other art piece can do that. All other art pieces are static. Yes, people walking by and looking at art pieces may feel something different from it. It may mean something different to them and to each person individually, but like the story stops there, right? That's it. It's the same image. So I thought that was really interesting. So let me tell you some of the places that let me tell you some of the places that the code's taking you, and then I'll tell you some of the things that I'm working on that I think is interesting. So the code has the first place that the code took people was to a blockchain game I guess backing up a second, one of the other opportunities that I see with codes is the ability to direct attention to things that have been built in the space or are being built in the space that are really cool that don't get the limelight because they're not hyped. They don't have influencers pumping them. No one's talked about them, right? To me, there's lots of like unsung heroes of the space that have built really cool stuff and really cool implementations of blockchain technology that nobody in the general knows because these people are just builders. They're not out there shilling their stuff. They're not out there hiring influencers to talk about what they're doing. So the first place I had the codes go to was a game called Ribbits. Ribbits is a game on the blockchain. You can play it on your phone. You can play it on your computer. So you scan the code and it took you right into the game. Full screen, play now game. And you could save your score on the blockchain with ETH. You pay a transaction fee. You can save your score. So we did a whole giveaway for the top 5 winners of a Saturday and then another 24 hours of a Sunday. The other cool thing about the Ribbits game is that part of that transaction to save your score with ETH goes to a prize pool on the contract. So at the end of the second day, the top 3 scores all split the prize pool of 0.2 ETH. So they each made, about 0.06, 0.07 ETH, whatever that is, right? Which is amazing. Like we're talking about an implementation of the blockchain that no one has even like really experimented with. I mean, you had Dookie Dash, but Dookie Dash wasn't letting you like connect to the blockchain to save your score with ETH. And then there's like a prize pool that you're competing for. And oh, by the way, the only way you could play Dookie Dash was if you held a sewer pass. I think the model should be different. I think it should be a try it before you buy it model with games, especially in Web3. So you can allow people to play the game. Anyone could have scanned the code and played the Ribbits game, but they would have had to spend a little bit of ETH to save it. But I want you to think about a world in which the only way you can save your score is if you have a certain NFT in your wallet, ergo a codes. So instead of having to just pay the ETH transaction to save your score, you have to own an NFT in your wallet to save your score. Anyone can play, but like if you're good at the game, you're more likely to be like, yeah, I'll pick up a codes and save my score because I'm going to win. I'm great at this game. And you know how many more people would have played Dookie Dash if anyone could have played it before, like try it before you buy it, but they couldn't have saved their score. They could have played, but they could only save their score if they saved it anyway. So that was kind of like the first place we took people, which was really interesting, really unique, really fun. From there, I had the idea of gift cards. So I was like, dang, I want to give back, just find interesting ways. So I was able to like secure some gift cards and get them. I started out with just one and it was claimed in like, I don't know, 30 or 40 seconds or something. It was a Starbucks gift card. But the cool thing about the Starbucks gift cards is if you get the claim page, it has a barcode on it. So I think 7 different people used that one gift card. None of them knew each other. People were from all over the country and they all were using the same Starbucks gift. Think about that. The only way that would ever even happen or make sense or work is like this kind of world, this Web3 world that we're living in, right? So I thought that was really interesting. From there, I was like, well, let me see if I can token gate a page where you have to own a certain number of codes in order to see the gift cards. And that worked out really well. So the first one I did, you had to own 2 codes in order to get through and claim the codes. The second one I did, you had to own 5 codes. So if you think about that, I can basically create higher value or cooler opportunities for people who own more codes and token gate the page to it. But I also can mix in opportunities for people who only own 1 code, right? And kind of keep that dispersion going. But then I can also mix in opportunities like right now, there's a game that anyone can play. It's a silly game. It's a checks game. If you scan the code, you'll see it. But anyone can play it. Anyone can get a high score. You can post that and you'll get a prize. So what I'm really trying to do is create different experiences for everyone to be able to partake in, for everyone that owns a code to be able to partake in, and then people who own a lot of codes to be able to partake in, all kind of separately, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And
I have some more like alpha that I'm willing to drop, but I'll pause there for now.
Pause it there for a second. We'll save it for the very end as we close up in like 5-10 minutes. I can see the different avenues of your life and different expertise kind of merging into this codes between the content creation, creating experiences, counterculture, the financial component to it. From a technical perspective, for those who are maybe interested in purchasing, what is the supply of it and how often do the QR codes change? And if it isn't a static amount of time, what goes into the thinking behind changing the codes?
Great questions. So there were, with an hour left to go before the mint closed on Friday, like a week and a half ago, there were like 1,900 codes minted, 1,800 codes or something, 1,900 codes minted. And then in the last hour, it jumped to like 2,567. So someone in the last minute was like, oh, we're going to mint these things. They minted at 0.005. So I'm just pleased that all the people that minted, if they wanted to get out, they could get their money back, or double or triple their money back. And to me, that's a huge win in this space, because I mean, all of us have been rugged. All of us have, minted things that went to zero immediately. So for me, I'm just proud of the fact, here we are coming up on 2 weeks into the project, and anyone that minted the project and believed in my vision, they're all good. They're all 2x what they minted for. There's like no worries there. They could sell one, keep one if they minted two, kind of thing. So to me, that's like a huge win. So 2,567 of these in existence. The code changes whenever I want the code to change. So part of it is keeping people on their toes, right? And keeping it fun. So there's certainly going to be times the code changes that you don't like check in or tune in or scan the code or go to the website that is about to be released. It's not released yet, but to see like where the code takes you. And that's fine, because the reality is there's always going to be more opportunities. There's always going to be something else to kind of see on the code. But I do want to keep it a little bit mysterious of like when the code changes, for a few reasons. Number one, that doesn't box me in as like an artist or creative. And we all know that like keeping if I were like to set a time, like 10 a.m. every day, the code changes, that's just work for me. That's just another thing on top of all the other things I'm doing to have to like stress about, have to worry about, and be like, oh, it's after 10. People are going to cancel me because I didn't update the code. So I like keeping it flexible and mysterious, just selfishly, because it allows me to just kind of do what I want when I want. But what I've been doing is typically once a day. I don't like the code being on the same spot more than once, more than one day in a row. So I do change it once a day. The time that it changes varies. I do typically tweet about the change, not right away. If it's like a gift card giveaway, I don't tweet about it right away, because I want people to feel that experience of like, hey, I'm going to check my codes today, and to see a gift card and then be able to get it, claim it, use it, and be like, oh, like, finding the treasure. It's like, yeah, I got it. I was first. That to me, that's like a cool experience for people to be able to have. It makes it fun. It keeps it fun versus as soon as I make the code go to the gift card page, just tweeting about it, then it's just like, well, whoever's like quickest to the draw on my Twitter. And that to me is not as fun. It's just like, it kind of cheapens it a little bit. So I don't know if that answers your question about how often it changes, but it's really, just whenever I want to change it, but once a day usually.
Well, it's also important, because if you don't have a static time for changing, then you also know how many community members are paying attention to what's happening and are participating. This is one of the issues with just common NFT projects is people own so many, they become disinterested in 99%. And the only thing they pay attention to is the value. Here, if they're actively engaging with the QR codes, they know they're looking for things outside of just value as well. And they're probably going to be valued community members who are going to contribute more than just dollars or ETH into the project.
Yep. Exactly. So yeah. So, and the other thing about it is I think that the community size, like the number of holders, it's over 650 holders. I think maybe close to 700 holders. I haven't checked recently, but it's like a solid number of people. It's not just like 50 people minted all these. No, like a lot of people minted just a few, but it's also not a 10K, some crazy, like Jack Butcher had 20,000, checks minted. It's not anything where it's like, wow, this is so big and like appeasing everyone. It's a little bit smaller. It's right in that sweet spot. I think anything between 2,000 and 5,000 supply is like really good spot to be in, because you're going to have a lot of people in that range that are supporting your project or supporting what you're doing, that aren't going to just be in it to flip for a penny and then be out and you flood your floor to zero. You're going to get a lot of people who want to hold and be a part of what you're building. And then it does allow enough supply for people to be able to trade and have some of that market momentum back and forth. Whereas like if you only have 100-piece collection, I mean, you may sell one a month or, I mean, there's just none of that volume back and forth. So for a collection like Codes, it's really important to have that not too big, not too small, but you need some movement happening in the floor and people transacting and trading them. And you need enough to be able to also gift to people and send to people. I've given over 100 of these things away already, which I've probably spent $5 to $6 in gas each time, I don't want to see how much gas I've spent sending these away. It's a ridiculous amount. Anyone that wants to go look and tell me, you can go do that. But it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars in gas just sending them to people, because I think that's really important. I think too many founders and too many projects, everyone's just so greedy, man. Everyone's so freaking greedy. And it's like, dude, just send, like, do fun stuff, send your thing to more people. And they're like, oh, well, if I do these giveaways or if I send it to someone, they're just going to dump it on the floor. And it's like, yeah, they might buy it back. Whatever. You gave them 0.01 ETH, 0.02 ETH, and that's all they wanted. Great. You know, whatever. But there are going to be a lot more people than you think that won't just sell it right away. They're going to be interested and like, oh, you sent me this and it was free and it's a code. Okay, I'm going to check this out. I'm going to dive into it. And that's kind of how all the things that I do are all kind of like bootstrap from the, like, I just do it. It's all grinding. Like, most stuff I do is me. Like, even my content, it's me. Dude. It's like, I just do it. And I like to do the bootstrap method and figure things out and to like test and to spread the word and to all these things. It's not like there's a team of people that, you know, all of them are getting paid all this money and they need, it's like, I can give these things away and do these creative things and try this and try that, because at the end of the day, it's just me experimenting with these things. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what I got.
You've answered pretty much every question so far. Just want to let you know that. We have a name for that. It's actually called the Scrappy Creator. You're very gritty and you like to get into the thick of things and kind of figure things out. I'm definitely along those lines as well. But for those who made it this far, tell us some alpha. What are we gonna see? Also, just keep in mind this episode will be released probably about 10 days from right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I have ideas, I do try to move relatively quickly. So we'll see that hopefully at least one of these things I'm about to talk about is already implemented by the time you're listening to this podcast, but maybe not. Maybe this is still alpha even then. I'm excited to talk about it at least now, and at least you'll know, Jake. So you'll have some alpha what I'm working on. And maybe you can even help me with one of the things I'm working on. So there are two things. First is a burn. So from the beginning, and even in the long thread, something fell into the air. Even in the long thread that I wrote, by the way, again, I liked that Jack wrote a really nice thread, and then he added to that thread over time. I thought that was a really genius way to use Twitter. And so, like, anytime he wants to add to the thread, people may see it on their timeline, but then if they click it, they're like, oh, there's like a lot of information here about what's going on. They're more likely to read it and to experience it. So that's been really helpful to be able to explain what codes are. I can just direct them to a thread. But part of that thread, I talked about a burn. And so and people are like, well, why do you need a burn? You already have the QR code. Well, just imagine it's a tiered system. It's a membership tiered level system. Don't you think there are more valuable or cooler opportunities that I could give to a smaller number of people? Yeah, that makes sense. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, we can have a burn. So it's most likely going to be a 4-to-1 burn. Again, not everyone's going to do it, but I think a handful of people will do it. But then what that allows me to do is have a new code, a new metadata, a new image that is separate from the main collection code. Here's what I'm trying to do, though. I want to work with an artist to, and I reached out to Carsonated, and if you have any suggestions, let me know. But I want to work with an artist to have a code integrated into an art piece that's still scannable from the OpenSea main page. So the code needs to still be relatively large, but not as big as like the full image, but have art around it. So now it's not only are you getting a token that is rarer and potentially gives you access to higher value or cooler opportunities, but it also is a unique token that's not just a code, it's a code integrated into art. So I think that's really awesome. I'm just trying to find the right artist to do that with. And the burn mechanism works now. Manifold has released the 721 burn, so we can do it. It's just literally as soon as I find an artist that wants to rock with me and knock out this one-on-one code, I'm gonna implement this because I think it's gonna be fun. That's kind of alpha number one. Alpha number two is an idea that I most recently had. I love sometimes these ideas just kind of pop in your head. Art Blocks Curated and how they built this whole platform of a curation system where it's, if an artist is dropping something on Art Blocks Curated, it's legit. They've been vetted by Art Blocks team. It's something unique. They feel like it offers something special to the space. And I was like, dude, I've always wanted to like figure out a way to work with artists with codes and direct attention towards something that an artist is doing. But I'm just like, this is softball layup, hit it out of the park. Codes curated. Codes curated. What Codes curated will be is unique drops from artists, one of one usually, with either limited quantity or limited time claims that only codes holders can mint for either free or some sort of like cheaper mint for that person. So I've got some feelers out to a few artists. I'm not going to say who they are. I have one artist that is starting to become well known in I'm not even going to say what field, but they're starting to become a little well known. I've got them interested in doing a unique piece for us. But the idea would be every so often we would have a codes curated drop from an artist that makes a unique piece, and only codes holders are able to claim those. And actually, maybe even the first one that I do may also be a burn, depending on how I want to do. If I want to do 4-to-1 on the main burn or 3-to-1, there may be some sort of like 1-for-1 burn, a code for an art piece kind of thing with the first piece, just to kind of test the technology out. But yeah, that's the idea. Eventually there'll be a collection of codes curated that will be all the artists that have been selected, and their pieces will live in that. So yeah, man, those are the two most exciting things that I'm currently working on. The website, of course, is the one right now is a simple website that just is a place to kind of fact check, make sure that the code is the right code and everyone's going to the right link and stuff like that. But really exciting stuff.
Yeah, man, it sounds like it's really coming together. The cool part of being a creator in Web3 is that you come up with a new idea every day, these new tokenization methods, these new collaborative methods. I've been really big on this idea of like collaborative NFTs, which are pretty undefined, right? But when you see this in just the tech space or any industry, the inevitable ultimatum is that those who collaborate are the ones who find a lot of success. Unfortunately, NFT space has been very tribal, I think, up until now, but it seems like those who participate in this open edition meta, which I think is actually a trend. I don't think it's just like a small meta. It's actually something much larger. It seems like there's a lot of collaboration happening between those who are doing these limited open editions. And so you're falling right in line with that. And I've been thinking of my own projects that I'm going to be launching probably next month. Which is kind of similar to yours as well. So it seems like a lot of different creators are kind of coalescing around the same idea. I'm a big fan. I think I have like 5 or 6 codes. So I will be burning. I think it's just interesting that, as when you're a leader or if somebody's offering a burn, the option to be like their most astute community member by burning for 4 to feeling like, closer to the creator, I think is just like it's a huge opportunity for many people, right? To just be more, whether it's gated access or additional benefits or membership or whatever it is. So, hey, man, I'm all for the experimentation. And I think a lot of us are starting to move to that direction of stop doing these like copy pastes at 10K PFPs and really just start exploring this idea of social tokens.
I love the meta of like getting away from PFPs, to be honest. And that's the thing I love about codes is like, I feel no stress or pressure from like a PFP standpoint. Like the code is always relevant. It's not going to, it's just the code, right? It's like the destination is what matters and it can change. And, I'm sure there are lots of people that have PFPs that they wish they could change potentially, instead of having to just them go to 0. They'd rather them change potentially over time and keep their value. So it's a lot of fun stuff to play around with. I actually recently figured out a way it's going to take me some time to implement, but I figured out a way to token gate a Telegram chat. So I'm going to token gate a Telegram chat. Now, this may be something, now that I'm thinking about it live on the fly, this may be something that is only available to the new burn code holders as like a really like small group. Like this is the alpha chat. I actually think that's really genius. And that's probably what I'm going to do now that I'm speaking about it out loud. If you burn, you'll be and have one of the burn's new tokens that will give you access to a token gate of Telegram. That's an interesting idea. I like that.
Well, one more, something that I found for a project that I'm going to do, which is alpha. I've never actually said this on publicly too, is I found a way to token gate a live stream with a token gated chat as well. So you can really start dabbling into some unique ideas when you start doing these, and you can token gate it with multiple tokens as well.
You gotta DM me those details.
I'll talk to you after this. One final question: What do you have more conviction in, crypto or content creation?
What do I have more conviction in? Oh, geez. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I know it's your bread and butter.
I think more conviction in. I guess it depends on the context of the question, but I'm just going to go with the context of what I'm thinking about. I think content creation is something that everyone should understand how it works and how to do it. Regardless of whether you want to be a big time or not, like there's just no world in which content creation doesn't become more and more important for business, for life, for opportunities moving forward into the future, especially as things become more digital and as there are more and more voices and messaging and marketing out there. Understanding how to connect with people, create content to connect with people, even on a small scale, is probably the most valuable thing you can learn over the next year or two. And if you're not, you're going to be left behind in the new world. Yeah. In my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jason, thank you for coming on, man. I literally thought of probably 5 different ideas while sitting here talking to you. So we'll probably have to end up doing this again sometime in the future. So appreciate you for sharing your time with us.
Absolutely. Let's collaborate. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day. If you're hearing this, my motto is go touch some grass.
Go touch some grass, homies. If you're out in Vegas, go hit the casino, just like myself. So thank you for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.